Hey guys, what the fuck's up, you guys? My name's eMandan642, and wow. This game. This fucking game. I never thought I'd see the day where I dislike a Layton game. Well, I take it back. I don't dislike this game. It's just, this game was the least enjoyable and least fun Layton game I've ever played. This is one of my favorite video game franchises ever, and for it to be as boring and uninteresting as it is to me, it's sad. I may be being too harsh. This game is not bad by all means, but I can't say it's a good game. In this game, you follow not Professor Layton, but his daughter, Katrielle Layton. She just opened up her detective agency. The whole game is just 12 cases where you solve some dumb mystery. This game feels more like an Ace Attorney game than it does a Layton game. I'm not against this laid-back, more lighthearted style of gameplay, and it could work for more of a spin-off Layton game, but this is a mainline Layton game. But there's no story to it. Each case is its own story. The Ace Attorney games have 4 to 5 cases, and each of them are their own story, but some events do carry over to other cases, as well as most of the cases feeling like really good stories, most of them. But in this game, none of the cases have anything to do with each other. Even near the end of the game, where it gets more serious, the cases are still their own story. The Millionaires conspiracy is the last case, and it doesn't feel like it really matters at all. Katrielle is a very different character than Layton, and nowhere near being as good as him. She is very unprofessional and bases her claims on feelings and hunches. She's a very independent person, which is not a bad thing at all, but this is Layton's daughter. She should be more professional in her work. She doesn't feel like Layton's daughter. She doesn't experience hardship in this game to make her think about what she's doing because she always has the right answer. Layton always has the answer, but it feels earned. It feels like he needed to have all the evidence to make sure he is right, but Kat just pulls it out of her ass and happens to be right. It would also be really cool to see Kat be overshadowed by Layton and his godlike status, and for her to try and overcome that and be her own person, but nope, she is just always right. So at the start of the game, we see Katrielle dreaming of Professor Layton. Holy shit. So Professor Layton is missing. Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure why this is something important in the game, but it is. It goes absolutely nowhere. Layton is not important at all to the story, so what's the point in bringing him up? Anyway, Katrielle opens up her agency with her partner Ernest Greaves, who is this kinda timid character who secretly worships Katrielle. That's all I could really say about his character. He's not really interesting at all. He's just there most of the game while Kat wanders around. Their first customer is a talking dog, who is a dog that can talk. Also, he has amnesia and can't remember anything about his life. Kat just named him Cheryl and he tags along the whole game. First off, I don't like this idea of a talking dog being a main character. We've had talking animals before, like Subject 3, who was a rabbit that Dimitri did tests on, but he was a very minor character. Cheryl is a main character. He shows up looking for Kat to solve the mystery of who he is and why he's a dog, but they just forget about him and he's never brought up again. So this main character has a mystery on who he is and where he comes from, but it's never talked about again or solved. And like Ernest, he's not a very good character. I mean, at least Ernest is fine. Cheryl's just annoying. He makes dog puns every other line because, you guessed it, he's a talking dog. So he has to, of course. In fact, none of the characters are really interesting or enjoyable. Kat and Ernest are fine, but the rest of them are just so forgettable. Inspector Hastings is this game's Shelmy or Grosky, but of course, not as interesting. He just acts as someone to say, "Kat, are you fucking stupid? What the hell is wrong with you?" whenever she makes a claim. Or there's Amelia Perfetti, who is just a criminal profiler. She's not that important. She just acts as someone to say, "Katrielle, you fucking stupid, I am better than you." Well, what about old characters? For a game like this, we need old characters to at least push the story forward and make it worth telling. But of course, there are rarely any returning characters. And the few we do see are just treated like other minor characters in the game. Just there to serve minimal purpose to push the plot along. The whole game takes place in London. London is a cool place, but that loses a lot of the charm of the Layton games taking place in these weird-ass quirky places. That was a problem in Azran Legacy I noted, where every place felt either really generic or just didn't have enough time spent in it where they're memorable. But London in this game is just so fucking generic. Like, you don't really explore much, you go to a few streets and a few buildings, and that's it. Nothing stood out. London is just London. That's why you never spent that much time in London in the previous games. It's just an average city and nothing more. So like I said, there are 12 cases. I'm not totally against this idea, but all the cases are boring and uninteresting and stupid. I won't go in depth on them because there's nothing to go in depth on. The first one, for example, the hour hand on the Big Ben is missing, so Kat has to find it. Why? This is boring and dumb. Why should I care? It turns out that the hand was just a big wafer and it fucking melted. What? That case is a more stupider example than most of them, but they all have a very childish vibe to them. I know this is an E-rated game, but the older games had darker themes, and it didn't treat you like you were kids. In this case, it's just so childish with its writing. At the end of each case, usually there is someone at fault who did something wrong, but every time, they are always forgiven. Never is there any consequences or repercussions for any of the characters' wrongdoings. Every case. They're all the same stupid thing. This game is very repetitive. There's some little problem to solve and you talk to people, and you talk to people, and talk to people until you solve it. That's it. Talk to people, go to another area, talk to people, some more. I know that is basically every Layton game, but it never felt this tedious and boring to play. It always felt like a mystery unsolving with interesting characters and interesting locations, but this game never encapsulates that feeling of a mystery unsolving. It doesn't help that the dialogue is really bad. The dialogue was always engaging and witty in the previous games, but I was so bored the whole way through. The dialogue was either really boring or really dumb. No in between. Okay, so everything in this game is mediocre or bad. But what about the puzzles? The main point of the game. They're okay. I mean, they aren't bad. Some of them are actually pretty good. Some of them. Most of them are really uninspired and uninteresting. Also, most of them are so easy. Like, even at the end of the game, there were really easy puzzles. I would say that's the best part of the game, but that isn't saying much. Also, the music, which was amazing in the previous games, is really mediocre here. It's either less good remasters of older songs, or just not good songs. The one thing that even Azran Legacy mostly did right, they fucked up. There are a few good songs though. Well, here it is, the spoilers. I mean, this game really doesn't have much of a story, but here it is. So, the last few cases are more serious, I guess. They still don't have much to do with each other, but here they are. I'll just talk about the last two cases because those are kinda important. So case 11, Wanted. In this case, Kat is suspected of murder, and being the perfect quirky being that she is, she didn't do it. So she runs from the police while trying to solve the case for herself. This is a concept that is done many times before. The idea of a main character being accused of something they didn't do, for example murder, is a really good idea, but there has to be repercussions to it. Here, it's not treated as a big event or anything, and after it's over, it's just forgotten about and we just move on. So, Chief Inspector Batanas accuses Kat without any sort of evidence. Now, for this kind of situation to work, there has to be something against the main character being accused to work off of. But there is no evidence against Kat. She wanders around for a bit, then comes back to the scene of the murder. The person who was murdered was, of course, not an important character, but just some random shop owner. She solves the mystery, and as it turns out, the owner is not dead. Oh, that's a relief. I thought death was real for a second. But no, something fell off her shelf and hit her on the head. And Britanas discovered her body and blamed Kat. So Britanas is rivals with Hastings, and as of late, Kat has been helping Hastings with solving mysteries. So he wanted to get her out of the picture so he could have the advantage. Well, this could have worked, but this is the first time ever seeing Britanas. If he was a better character and we saw more of a flaw with Hastings, it could work, but nope. And of course, Britanas has no repercussions for falsely accusing someone of murder. So the last case, the only one that matters. I'd hardly say it matters at all, honestly. So Kat and the 7 dragons are invited by the mysterious Lord Adamas to the abandoned mansion of Maximilian Richmond, the millionaire who died 10 years ago. The letter was sent to Herschel Layton and not Katrielle Layton, but she goes anyway. At the mansion, Adamas, who is a disembodied head, makes everyone sign a contract that states they have to solve a series of puzzles, and if they fail, they have to give up all of their money. The 7 dragons willingly sign it, and Kat's like, fuck it, let's do it. So after 4 rather easy puzzles, Kat solves the mystery and everyone else fails. Of course, like the genius she is, Kat figures out the mystery of who Adamas is and the mystery of the Richmond fortune. So, Lord Adamas is none other than Ernest Greaves. Really? This little bitch? Yes, Ernest. Ernest Greaves, or rather Miles Richmond, is the last grandchild of Maximilian Richmond. Ernest grew up thinking that the 7 dragons ruined his grandfather and stole all of his money. The dragons got their money from a diamond mine that Richmond owned, but shortly before his death, he relinquished his claim on the land and arranged for the dragons to find the land and become rich. His goal was for the money to be invested into London and make it a better place. This is a good story, but I have a few issues with it. Why did Richmond knowingly give up all of his money if it would put his family in financial ruin? That's the reason why Ernest wanted revenge in the first place. Also, Ernest's mom knew this the whole time but never told Ernest about it. So he wanted revenge for something that dragons never did and his mom never thought to tell him. Also, from the writing standpoint, none of this was ever even mentioned before the last case. This should have at least been mentioned or talked about before this case. Also about Ernest. We've had plenty of villain plot twists in previous games, but Ernest was always treated as a tag-along and nothing else. We should have at least had something fishy about him, so this reveal doesn't come out of nowhere, but it does come out of nowhere. So the dragons are in debt to the Richmond family for their fortune, so everyone forgives everyone and they all lived happily ever after. Okay. We get this after credits scene where Katrielle says she figured out the puzzle that her father left for her. That puzzle being, if you're not really my child, then who exactly are you? What? What the fuck does this mean? This is definitely a cop-out. I've seen one theory about what this could mean, but that might be spoilers for the anime or the potential next Mystery Journey game, so if you don't want to hear it, then skip ahead. Also, skip ahead if you haven't played Azran Legacy, because there are spoilers for that game. That theory is that Katrielle is not actually Layton's daughter, but Descale's long-lost daughter, who was thought to be dead. This is actually a really cool concept. Descale's daughter being mentioned in Azran Legacy seemed to be important, but we never knew anything about her or what happened to her. So this could be a possibility. That would be really cool. We would get to know more about Descale and what he was doing before his role as Descale. But this sounds too good to be true, honestly. Well, that's that. This game was definitely a disappointment. I was surprised this game was so disconnected from prior Layton games, because it only came out 4 years after the previous game. The game had a lot of potential to expand the story to new characters, but it didn't. And nothing of previous games came back aside from a few minor characters. There is an anime that does bring back some important stuff, for what I know, but really? That should be in the actual game and not the anime. I have not watched the anime yet, so I'm judging this game not based on that. I'm gonna give Layton's Mystery Journey, Katrielle, and the Millionaires Conspiracy a 5 out of 10. I may be a bit harsh on it, but this game was not enjoyable at all. I can't say it's a bad game, but it was not enjoyable. This will be the last Layton game I will review for a while. I will play the other games like Layton's Mystery Room and Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. For the latter game, I'm going to review the main Layton Ace Attorney games first. This game feels like it lacks a point. I'd only recommend this game if you are really a Layton fan. If you aren't, then you're not going to enjoy it. So with that said, I'm going to be ranking all of the 7 main Layton games. At number 7 is Layton's Mystery Journey. I didn't like this game. And number 6 is Azran Legacy. This game had a lot of great ideas, but a lot of them didn't work. But some of them did, so it's not that bad. At number 5 is Curious Village. This game is still very enjoyable. It's short and simple, but it has a nice relaxing charm to it. It's practically the opposite of Azran Legacy in that regard. At number 4 is Last Spectre. This game is overall pretty good in most categories, but it's held back by its bad story. The story is just bad. And number 3 is Miracle Mask. Like Last Spectre, this game is pretty good in all categories, but not the best. The story is not the best, but it's not bad. And number 2 is Diabolical Box. These last 2 games I really, really love. This game has a great story and great characters, and it's just a great journey throughout. And number 1 is Unwound Future. This is one of my favorite games of all time. This game means a lot to me. Amazing story and amazing characters. One of my favorite endings of any video game. One thing I've noticed when reviewing these games is that I only really love Diabolical Box and Unwound Future. The rest of them I like, most of them, but not nearly as much as these 2. But Professor Layton is still one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. I really hope you enjoyed these reviews. It made me happy to replay these games and review them all, but I'm really glad to be done with them. This has been Layton's Mystery Journey, Katrielle and the Millionaires Conspiracy. Fuck you.